Arthur's voice echoed throughout the conference room as he raised his glass of champagne. "I'm delighted to announce our new regional director, my brilliant niece Lily Monroe." Applause erupted around me, but I couldn't move. My hands remained frozen in my lap while everyone else clapped enthusiastically. 8 weeks Lily had been here, exactly 8 weeks, and was landing the position I'd been promised for 3 years. I forced my mouth into what I hoped resembled a smile and clasped my hands together in slow, deliberate claps. The sound felt hollow, like everything else. At that moment, Arthur's eyes briefly met mine across the table and I saw something flicker in them, guilt perhaps, or defiance. Either way, he quickly looked away. "Amy has already been a wonderful mentor to Lily," she continued, her voice laced with that condescending tone she'd come to despise. "I know she'll continue to support our new principal in any way she can support." The word tasted bitter in my mouth. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, 3 years of missing family dinners to close deals, 3 years of building this department from 12 to 47 employees, and now I was supposed to be supporting someone in my position. Before I continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories that matter if you believe loyalty should be valued over family politics in the workplace. Please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how it all plays out. Lily stood up with her blonde hair, perfectly coiffed, her designer suit, crisp and expensive. She couldn't have been more than 28, fresh out of business school, with her MBA and her daddy's connections. "Thanks so much, Uncle Arthur. I'm really excited to learn from Amy's experience as we transition into this new phase." Learn from my experience. Transition, the corporate jargon made my stomach turn. This wasn't a transition. It was a power grab. After the meeting broke up, I walked back to my office on shaky legs. The nameplate on my door still read Amy Hay, Senior Operations Manager, but now it felt like a lie. I'd been ignored and everyone in that room knew it. Some looked at me sympathetically, others avoided eye contact altogether. Margaret from accounting patted me on the shoulder as she passed, whispering, "I'm so sorry, darling." I closed my office door and sat behind my desk staring at the wall where I'd hung my Employee of the Year certificates, 3 of them, one for each year I'd been here. They'd done very little for me. My phone buzzed with a text from Joseph, my husband. How was the announcement finally official? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "We'll talk tonight." The rest of the day passed in a haze of enforced normalcy. I answered emails, reviewed reports, and attended meetings where people kept giving me pitying looks mixed with embarrassment by 5. My jaw was aching from maintaining that fake smile. Arthur appeared in my doorway just as I was gathering my things. "Ami, can we talk for a moment?" Of course I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair he'd sat in 3 months ago, promising me this promotion was just a formality. He settled his large frame into the seat, his silver hair reflecting the overhead light. "I know today was tough for you." It was. I kept my voice even professional. "Look, you're incredibly valuable to this company. Lily's going to need someone with your experience to help her get up to speed. I expect you to also take on a senior advisory role to coach her, to do my job, to help her succeed in her new position." He corrected, but we both knew what he meant. I leaned back in my chair studying this man who had been my father-in-law for 8 years. I'd always respected Arthur, admired his business acumen and appreciated how he'd welcomed me into the family. But sitting there watching him try to spin this betrayal into some kind of opportunity, I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Arthur, can I ask you something?" "Of course. 3 months ago, you told me this promotion was mine. You said I'd earned it, that no one deserved it more. What changed?" He shifted, uncomfortably fiddling with his wedding ring. "The needs of the business evolved. Lily brings a fresh perspective, new ideas. 8 weeks of fresh perspective versus 3 years of proven results. Amy, you're taking this way too personally, too personally." I almost laughed. This is my career, this is my life we're talking about. How else should I take it? Your family, he said, as if that explained everything. Family looks out for each other. Lily needed this opportunity and, frankly, you're safe here. You don't need the promotion like she did. Therein lay the real truth. I was family, which meant I was expected to sacrifice myself for the good of everyone else. I was supposed to be grateful for the deeds, content to be the reliable Amy who would always be there to clean up everyone else's messes. I stood up gathering my purse and jacket. Well, I should be going home. Joseph is making dinner tonight. Arthur seemed relieved by the change of subject. Give my love to my son. I really appreciate your understanding about all this. I nodded and headed outside, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the foyer, understanding that's what I called it. When someone let themselves be walked over and accepted being stabbed in the back, the drive home felt interminable. Traffic crawled at a snail's pace on the freeway, giving myself too much time to think. I kept replaying Arthur's words, his casual disdain. For 3 years of my life, family takes care of each other, except when it came to me apparently. When I pulled into our driveway, the sun was setting. Joseph's car was already there and I could see a warm light glowing from our kitchen windows. Home had always been my sanctuary, the place where I could take off the corporate mask and simply be myself. But tonight, even that felt tainted. How could I face Joseph and tell him his father had just destroyed my career? With a smile and a champagne toast, I sat in the car for another 5 minutes watching our neighbors walk their dogs and water their gardens, normal people living normal lives, unaware that my world had just been completely knocked off its axis. Tomorrow I would have to go back to that office and pretend everything was okay. I would have to coach my replacement with grace and professionalism while my heart broke a little more each day. But tonight I just needed to sit in this car and feel the full weight of what had happened. Tomorrow I would figure out what came next. Joseph had already set the table. When I finally walked through the front door, the smell of his famous lasagna filled the kitchen. But for the first time in years I had no appetite. He looked me in the face and immediately pulled out a chair. Sit down, tell me everything. And so I did. I told him about the champagne toast, about Arthur's casual disregard for my 3 years, about the expectation that I train my own replacement. Joseph's jaw tightened at every detail. His knuckles whitened as he gripped his wine glass. Dad actually said, "You were safe here and that's why you didn't need the promotion." His voice held a dangerous edge. I rarely heard word for word. Joseph pushed away from the table, raking his hands through his dark hair. I'm going to call him right now. No, I reached out and grabbed his wrist. This isn't your fight, honey, it's mine. But the damage was done. The conversation he'd been dreading having was over, and now Joseph was furious with his own father, another victim of Arthur's decision. The next morning I walked into the office with a fake smile plastered on my face, ready to begin what Arthur called my mentor role. Lily came bounding into my office at exactly 9 o'clock, armed with a color-coded planner and an enthusiasm that made my teeth hurt. Amy, I'm so excited to learn from you. Uncle Arthur says you know this department better than anyone. I gestured to the chair on the other side of my desk. Let's start with the Morrison account. They're our largest client and have been with us since before you were born. For the next 2 hours I walked Lily through our client management system, explaining the intricate relationships I'd built, each contact's preferences, the delicate balance required to keep everyone happy. I frantically took notes, asking questions that revealed how little I understood about the business. So when Mr. Morrison calls annoyed about the delivery delays, what do? You don't promise anything, you can't deliver. You listen, acknowledge their concerns and give them a realistic timeframe with a small built-in buffer. But what if they threaten to take their business elsewhere? I paused, studying her perfectly made-up face. I really had no idea what she was up against. Lily Morrison Industries represents 30% of our annual revenue. If we lose that through mismanagement, 47 people lose their jobs, including you. Her pen stopped moving. Oh, by lunchtime my patience was wearing thin. Everything that had taken years to learn through trial and error. Now I was expected to unload it on someone who hadn't even read a quarterly report. But the real breaking point came during what should have been my lunch break. I was warming up leftover soup in the break room when I heard familiar voices coming from Arthur's office next door. The walls of this old building were famously thin and Arthur's extensional voice carried easily through the shared wall. "The transition is going perfectly," he was saying. "Lily is learning everything quickly. Are you sure Amy is okay with all this?" That was Lily's voice, younger and unsure. I moved closer to the wall. My soup was forgotten on the counter. "Amy has been reliable, but we need someone with fresh ideas. Lily is our future." Arthur's words hit me like a bucket of cold water. "She's good at following instructions, maintaining the status quo, but that's not what we need anymore. The company needs innovation, energy. You bring that, but she seems to know so much about everything. Some of the clients ask specifically for her." Arthur laughed and the sound made my stomach turn. "That's exactly the problem. Amy has become a crutch for our clients. They're too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up. Get them used to working with someone who will challenge their way of thinking instead of simply agreeing with everything they say. Challenge their way of thinking." I had spent 3 years building relationships based on trust and reliability, and Arthur saw that as a weakness. My carefully cultivated client relationships weren't assets, they were obstacles to her vision of the future. "And what about her feelings?" Lily insisted. "She worked very hard for this promotion. Amy's family, she'll understand that sometimes we have to make decisions that serve the greater good. Besides, she's not going anywhere. Where else would she go at her age? She's 42. Lily, companies want young talent, fresh perspectives. We're doing her a favor by keeping her here." At my age, 42 and seemingly washed up, I gripped the edge of the counter with white knuckles, fighting the urge to walk into that office and tell Arthur exactly what I thought of their greater good. "It's just that I feel bad," Lily continued. "She's been so kind in coaching me and I can tell she's hurt." "That's because you have a good heart. But business isn't about feelings. Amy will adapt. It always does. That's what makes her valuable. She's predictable, reliable. She'll do what we ask, because she has no other choice, predictable, reliable." With no other choice, I drank my soup and walked back to my office, my hands shaking with rage, not the hot, explosive kind of anger, but the cold, calculating fury that settles in your bones and changes everything. For 3 years I believed I was building something meaningful. I thought my loyalty and dedication mattered. But I was just the employee keeping things running smoothly until true leadership could take over. Arthur saw me as a placeholder, a babysitter for his clients, until his precious niece was ready to take the reins. And the worst of him was right about one thing: I'd been predictable. Had absorbed every offense, swallowed every disappointment and smiled through every humiliation because I believed it would all be worth it in the end. But sitting in my office staring at my Employee of the Year certificates, as Arthur's words echoed in my head, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I wasn't the same person who had walked into this building that morning. The woman who had spent 3 years proving her worth to people who would never see her was gone. That afternoon I continued coaching Lily with the same professional demeanor, but inside something new was taking shape. Every question I asked, every gap in her knowledge I filled, every client relationship I explained in detail. I was documenting my own worth, not for Arthur's benefit but for my own clarity. As 5 o'clock rolled around, I gathered my things with deliberate calm. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, I was sure of it. But tonight I needed to think seriously about what came next. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of tea getting cold beside me. Joseph was working late, which gave me the peace of mind I needed to do what I'd been thinking about for 2 weeks. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I began to type. "Dear Arthur, Please accept this letter as my formal notification of resignation from my position as Senior Operations Manager at Alden Ventures. My last day of employment will be Friday, March 15th, fulfilling the standard 2 weeks notice. I want to thank you for the opportunities I've had here over the past 3 years. I've learned a lot and am grateful for the experience. I wish the company continued success in the future. Sincerely, Amy Ha. Short, professional, definitive. I read it 3 times. Each time, feeling a strange sense of peace settle within me. There was no anger in those words, no accusations, no emotional outbursts, just a clean and dignified exit from a situation that had become impossible to bear. I printed the letter on our home printer, signed it with my favorite pen and tucked it into a crisp white envelope. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed, sleeping better than I had slept in weeks. The next morning I dressed with special care in my navy blue business suit, the one that always made me feel confident, paired with my grandmother's pearl earrings. This was going to be a memorable day. I wanted to live up to it. I arrived at the office early, before most, and placed the envelope in the center of my desk. Then I went about my morning routine as if nothing had changed. I answered emails, reviewed reports, and even helped Tom in accounting fix a formula in a spreadsheet. At exactly 10, I took the envelope and walked over to Arthur's office. His secretary, Marie, looked up with her usual warm smile. "Good morning. Amy, just finishing a call." "No rush, I'll wait." Maria had been Arthur's secretary for 15 years and had always been kind to me. I wondered if she missed our brief morning chats about her grandchildren and my weekend plans. Probably not. Secretaries saw people coming and going all the time. Arthur's door opened and he came out looking harried, the phone still pressed to his ear. He gestured for me to come in. While he continued his conversation about quarterly projections, I sat in the familiar chair across from his desk and waited. When he finally hung up, he looked at me with barely concealed impatience. "What can I do for you, Amy?" "I have back-to-back meetings until 3 o'clock." I placed the envelope on his desk without a word. He stared at it for a moment. Then he looked at me in confusion. "What is this?" "Open it." Arthur ripped the envelope with his letter opener, unfolded the paper and read. I watched his expression change from mild curiosity to shock to something close to panic. His face went through several color changes, pale, then flushed, then red. "You can't be serious." The words tumbled out of him as he shot to his feet, his chair rolling back. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of negotiating tactic." I remained seated with my hands folded calmly in my lap. "I'm completely serious, Amy. We just promoted Lily 2 weeks ago. You can't jump ship now. She needs your guidance, your expertise. Only Morrison has it. She'll be fine. Lily's very enthusiastic. I'm sure she'll figure it out." Arthur started pacing behind his desk, raking his hands through his silver hair. "This is about the promotion, isn't it? Look, I know you're disappointed, but we can discuss other opportunities. Perhaps a different title, additional responsibilities." Arthur stopped mid-stride. I'd never used that tone with him before, calm, but absolute. "This isn't about the promotion anymore. It's about respect and the fact that I've realized I don't have any here." "That's not true. You are valued, Amy. Your family." I stood up slowly, flattering my skirts. "No, I'm not. Family would have been honest with me about their plans. Family wouldn't have let me train my replacement without telling me that's what I was doing. Family wouldn't have described as predictable and reliable." Behind my back, while he talked about how I have no other options, Arthur's face went white. "Did you hear that conversation?" Every word silence stretched between us, heavy, with 3 years of unspoken truths. Arthur slumped back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years old Amy. "Please, let's talk this through rationally. Whatever you heard, you could have misinterpreted." I understood perfectly. I headed toward the door. Then I paused with my hand on the handle. You were right about one thing, though, I've been predictable. I've spent 3 years making excuses for being ignored, convincing myself that my loyalty would pay off in the end. But I'm done being predictable. What do you want? More money? A corner office? Ask for anything. I turned to give him one last look. I want to work somewhere that values what I bring to the table, somewhere that sees potential instead of limitations. A place, don't think 42 is too old to have fresh ideas. Arthur opened his mouth to reply, but I was already walking out the door. Marie looked up as I passed her desk. Concern was written all over her face. She'd obviously heard Arthur's raised voice. All right, honey. I stopped and smiled at her, a real smile this time. Everything's going to be okay, Marie. Take care. Walking back to my office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The decision was made, the words had been spoken, and there was no turning back. I had 2 weeks to finish my projects, document my processes, and transfer my responsibilities. 2 weeks to say goodbye to a chapter of my life that had taught me more about myself than I ever expected to learn. The phone on my desk was already ringing when I sat down. News traveled fast in a small office, and I suspected the next 2 weeks were going to be very interesting. But for the first time, that horrible day in the conference room, I was eager to see what came next. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reorganizing my home office. I'd been unemployed for exactly 2 weeks, spending my days updating my resume, networking on LinkedIn, and trying to figure out what came next. The phone number wasn't familiar, but something made me answer it instead of letting it go to voicemail. Amy, hey, this is Rebecca Chin with Horizon Tech. I hope I'm not interrupting at an awkward moment. I almost dropped my coffee cup. Horizon Tech was one of the fastest growing companies in the region, known for its innovative approach to logistics and its reputation for promoting employees based solely on merit. Not at all. How can I help you? I'll get right to the point. Your name came up yesterday in a conversation with Daniel Morrison. He spoke highly of your work at Alden Ventures and suggested we get in touch. Daniel Morrison. Of course, the client I'd looked after for 3 years, whose trust I'd earned through countless late nights and weekend calls. I'd wondered if you'd even notice I'd left. That's very kind of you. I managed to say we have an opening for a regional director of operations position that would essentially oversee 3 departments and manage our largest client accounts. Daniel seemed to think I'd be perfect for the role. He'd be interested to learn more. My heart started racing. This wasn't just any job. It was exactly what I should have gotten at Alden Ventures, but bigger was better. I'd be very interested. Within the hour, I received an email with preliminary details that made my eyes pop wide open. The salary was 30% higher than what I was making. The benefits package included stock options and the title Regional Director of Operations. It was what I'd been promised but never received. The interview process moved quickly. Rebecca introduced me to the team leaders I'd potentially be leading, all of whom seemed genuinely excited to work together. The company culture was refreshingly straightforward, with no hidden agendas or family politics, just clear expectations and transparent communication. During my final interview with the CEO, Marcus Williams, he asked me something that took me by surprise: why did you leave Alden Ventures? Daniel mentioned he'd been there for several years. I had practiced answering this question, but sitting across from Marcus, a man known for building his company on merit rather than connections, I decided to be honest. I reached a ceiling that had nothing to do with my performance or potential. Sometimes you realize that loyalty without respect is just servitude. Marcus nodded slowly. We don't believe in ceilings here, Amy. We believe in earned advancement and mutual respect. Does this sound like something I could work with? Sounds like everything I've been looking for. 3 days later, Rebecca called with an offer that exceeded even my best-case scenario. As I read the contract, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a genuine excitement to go to work. My first day at Horizon Tech was like stepping into a different universe. The building was modern and bright, with open collaborative spaces and technology that actually worked. But, most importantly, from the moment I walked in, I felt welcomed as a valued member of the team rather than tolerated as a necessary burden. My direct report, Sarah Martinez, had been temporarily running operations and might have resented my arrival. Instead, he greeted me with a comprehensive briefing on current projects and genuine enthusiasm for the collaboration. "I've been waiting for this," he said as we reviewed quarterly projections. "Rebecca told me about your experience managing large-scale clients. We've been struggling with the Anderson Group account and, frankly, we could use your expertise." Experience, not reliability or dependability experience, the difference was profound. Within my first week, I was already leading strategy meetings and making decisions that had an immediate impact. When I suggested restructuring our client communication protocols based on lessons learned at Alden Ventures, Marcus not only listened but asked me to present the proposal to the board. "You've been doing this for 3 years," she asked after my presentation, and her previous employer never promoted her to director level. Apparently she was too predictable for leadership. Marcus laughed, not at me, but at the absurdity of the situation. "Their loss is our gain. Predictable outcomes is exactly what we want in leadership." The Anderson Group meeting was my first big test. They had been threatening to leave Horizon Tech for months, frustrated by breakdowns in communication and missed deadlines. I spent 2 days preparing, drawing on every client relationship skill I'd developed over the years. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, not only had we retained their business, but they'd agreed to extend their contract by 40%. "How did you do it?" Sarah asked. As we walked back to the office, I listened to what they really needed instead of what I thought they should want. Then I showed them exactly how we could deliver it. News of the success with Anderson quickly spread through the company. Suddenly, other department heads were asking for my input on their client relationships. Marcus started including me in executive strategy sessions. "You know," he said after one particularly productive meeting, "I'm starting to think we undervalued this position when we created it. Would you be interested in discussing expanded responsibilities?" Expanded responsibilities at Alden Ventures. That phrase had always meant more work for the same recognition. Here it felt like a genuine opportunity. By the end of my first month, I was not only managing operations but also leading a new client retention initiative. My team had grown from 12 to 18 people and our department's performance metrics were the highest they'd been in 2 years. Every morning when I logged into Horizon Tech, I was reminded of what it felt like to work somewhere that valued contribution over connections. My ideas weren't just heard, they were implemented. My expertise wasn't just recognized, it was leveraged for the growth of the company. The contrast with my old job was striking. At Alden Ventures, I'd spent 3 years trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I was expendable. At Horizon Tech, my worth was taken for granted and the focus was on how to maximize my contribution to our collective success. For the first time in my professional life, I understood what it meant to work at a company that truly valued merit over politics. 3 months into my new role at Horizon Tech, industry gossip began reaching me through unexpected channels. At a quarterly networking event, I ran into Janet Males from Pacific Financial, one of Alden Ventures' smaller clients. "Amy, I heard you've moved to Horizon Tech. Good for you." Her tone carried more than a casual congratulation. "Things have been interesting since you left." I kept my expression neutral. "Ah yeah, well, let's just say our new contact at Alden Ventures isn't as receptive as you were. 3 weeks to return a call, that never happened when you handled our account." Before I could respond, another colleague snatched her away, but her words stayed with me, 3 weeks to return a call. I'd always proud to answer the same day. The next piece of information came from an even more unexpected source. Daniel Morrison called me directly to Horizon Tech 2 weeks later. "Amy, I hope I don't bother you to contact you. I have a professional question, but I also wanted to warn you of something." "Of course, Daniel, what happens watching?" "We will end our relationship with Alden Ventures at the end of this quarter." My stomach shrunk. Morrison Industries was the biggest client in Alden Ventures. Losing them would be devastating. I regret to hear that. I can ask what happened. Daniel sighed deeply. Do you remember how we used to have those monthly strategy calls in which you explained the quarterly projections and adjusted our approach according to market changes? Of course. Well, your replacement Lily, I think our last 2 calls completely scheduled. When he finally returned the call, he could not answer basic questions about the state of our account. I kept saying that I would give me the information later, but those follow-ups never arrived. I closed my eyes, imagining Arthur's reaction when he found out about Morrison's decision. The drop that filled the glass was last week. We had a delivery crisis. Do you remember how you used to handle that? Leave everything, coordinate with logistics. Keep us informed every hour until it was resolved. I remember it. Lily told us to file a complaint through the right channels and investigate it when she had time. Amy, we are talking about a shipment of $2 million that was in the wrong warehouse. He treated him as a paperwork problem. I felt a mixture of emotions that I could not completely unravel, satisfaction that my value was demonstrating, but also a genuine sadness for the company that once I had imported so much. I regret to get to that. Daniel, I know Arthur valued his association. That is the issue. I don't think I did. When I called to speak directly with him about our concerns, he basically told me that Lily represented the new direction of the company and if we could not adapt to her new approach, perhaps we were not the appropriate partner. I stayed open. Arthur had basically invited his bigger customer to leave instead of recognizing that ascending to Lily had been a mistake. Anyway, Daniel continued. I wanted you to know that our decision has nothing to do with any animosity towards Alden Ventures as a whole. It is purely about the quality of the service and the recommendation that I gave to Horizon Tech about hiring you, the best business counsel I have given in years. After hanging up, I sat in my office processing what I had learned. Losing Morrison Industries would force Alden Ventures to fire at least 15 people. These were not abstract commercial consequences. They were real people with whom he had worked for 3 years. My assistant knocked on my door. Amy, Rebecca Chin wants to see you when you have a moment. I found Rebecca in his office with a pile of industry reports scattered on his desk. Sit, Amy, I have been listening to some interesting things about your former employer. My heart shrunk. The news of Alden Ventures' problems to Horizon Tech would have arrived. Were this to be negatively reflected in some way, Morrison's account was a good victory for us, he continued. But apparently they are not the only client of Alden Ventures who is looking for alternatives. 3 companies have contacted this week asking our services. They all mentioned your name. Specifically, relief flooded me seriously. It seems that you left a great impression during your time there. The question is, how do you want to handle this? They could be significant opportunities for Horizon, but I want to make sure we approach it ethically. I appreciated Rebecca's consideration. I think that as long as we are responding to genuine consultations instead of stealing customers actively, we are on safe terrain. These companies have legitimate service concerns that we can address. I think exactly the same. Would you feel comfortable leading the presentations for these new potential accounts? Absolutely. During the following month, Horizon Tech signed 4 new clients, all old accounts of Alden Ventures. Each presentation followed the same pattern: companies frustrated with the decrease in the quality of the service, non-compliance and poor communication deadlines. I found myself defending Alden Ventures' team even while he presented our services. They are going through a transition period, explained diplomatically, but in Horizon Tech we can offer them the consistency and reliability they are looking for. The most difficult moment came when Margaret of Accounting, my former colleague in Alden Ventures, called me home one night. Amy, I hope I don't bother you to call you. I got your Joseph number. Of course not, Margaret. How are you? Honestly, there are rumors of layoffs. Morrison's account is gone and apparently 3 other important clients have also left. His voice was trembling. People say it is because you left that you took all relationships with customers with you. Margaret, that's not I am blaming you. He interrupted. I understand why you left. We all saw how they treated you. But, Amy, some of us have been here for years. We have mortgages, children at the university. If Alden Ventures sinks, the weight of the unwanted consequences perched on my shoulders. He had wanted Arthur to realize my value, but he had never wanted. People good would suffer for your bad decisions. Are you looking for other opportunities? I asked him delicately, at my age. Who will hire a 58-year-old accountant? I thought about Horizon Tech's expansion plans, the new positions we would create as we grew. Margaret, can I give your contact information to Rebecca Chin? We will need experience with experience as we assume these new accounts. The relief in his voice was audible. Amy, will you do that? Are you good at what you do? That should matter more than politics or age. After hanging up, I realized that something had changed in how I saw the situation. It was no longer the decline of Alden Ventures, it was that people find places where their contributions were valued. Some of my former colleagues would be standing possibly in better situations than before, but Arthur's lesson was becoming clear to everyone in the industry. When you prioritize connections on competition, not only do you lose good employees, you lose the base that keeps a business stable. 6 months after Margaret joined our team on Horizon Tech, I received an invitation that left me frozen. It was a recorded, formal and elegant card. Arthur Alden requests the pleasure of his company at the annual Alden Ventures Awards dinner. I stared at the invitation for a long time, wondering what game Arthur was playing. Now Joseph found me in the kitchen that night spinning the card in my hands. You will not be seriously going to go, he said, reading over my shoulder. I really think so. He looked at me as if I had suggested swim. I felt different moral support, he had said, although he suspected that he also felt curious about the company. That had been silly. Sufficient accounting cornered me near the bar that he could respond. The lights were attenuated and Arthur took the stage. Self of himself, which once had respected, seemed diminished in some way. Welcome to what has been a challenging but educational year for Alden Ventures. It started. We have learned valuable lessons about adaptation, about the importance of strong leadership and about recognizing talent wherever you are. His eyes found mine, between the crowd, and for one moment neither of them looked away. This year, we are honoring employees who have shown exceptional dedication during difficult times, people who took a step forward when we needed them most. The award ceremony passed as usual, recognitions for sales achievements, excellence in customer service, innovation in problem solving, but something felt forced in all production. As if Arthur was trying to recreate the success to pure willpower. Then came the surprise. Our final prize tonight is a new one, Arthur announced. The recognition of excellence in leadership is for someone who may no longer be in our company, but whose impact continues to shape how we do business. My stomach shrunk. Amy Heiss, could you take the stage please? The room exploded in applause, but I remained frozen in my seat. Rebecca gave me a gently elbow. Go ahead, this is your time. Walking towards that stage was felt as the longest trip of my life. Arthur found me halfway by extending a glass prize that caught the lights of the dance room. Amy, your dedication to excellence and your commitment to our clients established a standard that continues to inspire our team. Although we regret that you have gone to new opportunities, we want to recognize the base you built here. I took the microphone looking at the faces I had worked with for 3 years. Some smiled, others seemed uncomfortable and a few, like Lily, sitting at Arthur's family table, they seemed frankly mortified. Thank you, I started my firm voice, despite my accelerated heart. Working in Alden Ventures taught me valuable lessons about business, about relationships and, most importantly, about knowing your own value. I paused at that, Calera. I have learned that loyalty is important but it should never be unilateral, that hard work matters, but only when it is recognized and valued. And sometimes the best you can do for yourself and for your career is to get away from situations that no longer serve your growth. The applause were more scattered this time, uncertain. I am grateful for my time here because it took me where I am now, in a company that values merit above politics, where ideas are heard regardless of who suggests them and where the potential is not limited by artificial ceilings. I returned the microphone to Arthur, whose smile had become remarkably forced. Thanks again for this recognition, and my former colleagues remember that they have more power than they believe. Use it wisely. As I returned to my table, silence was deafening. Then Margaret began to applaud, followed by Tom and then others throughout the room. Not everyone joined, but they did enough to make the message clear. After dinner, Arthur approached our table while Rebecca and I prepared to leave. "Amy, can we talk a moment?" Rebecca was diplomatically excused, leaving Arthur and me alone for the first time since my resignation. "What a speech," he said in an illegible tone. It was honest. I guess I deserved it. He seemed tired, defeated in a way he had never seen before. "You know, we are restructuring the leadership team. If you ever wanted to return Arthur, for I got up looking directly into my eyes 6 months ago, I could have been interested in showing you something. Tonight I realized that I don't need to show anything to anyone except myself. The company is in trouble without you. The company is in trouble because you made decisions based on family loyalty instead of common sense for business. That is no longer my problem to solve." I collected my bag and the glass prize that felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. "I hope things work for Alden Ventures, really, but my chapter is closed there." When leaving that dance hall, I felt a feeling of fullness that I did not expect. The scared and ignored woman who once desperately wanted the approval of Arthur had left. Instead, there was someone who knew his value and was not afraid to demand that he be recognized. Rebecca took me by the arm while we arrived at the parking lot. "So how do you feel?" The last word. I smiled, genuinely happy for the first time throughout the night, like freedom. The trip home was silent, both processing the events of the night. When I finally entered the main door, Joseph was waiting for me with a cup of tea and an inquisitive look. "As perfect," I said, and I said it seriously, it was absolutely perfect. Tonight, I placed the glass prize on my shelf next to a photo of my first day at Horizon Tech, 2 symbols of the same trip, one representing where he had been, the other showing where he was going. The woman of that photo was safe, valued, and was not afraid to occupy her space in the world. It was all that I had always had, the potential to be, just waiting for the moment appropriate to emerge. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply to become the person you always should be. If this history of work triumph had them on the edge of their seat, give the button of "I like it" right now. My favorite part was when Amy gave that powerful speech at the awards dinner, showing Arthur exactly what she lost. What was your favorite moment? Leave it in comments below. Do not miss any more empowerment stories like this. Subscribe and activate the bell of notifications so as not to miss any publication.